I will ask a question first. And I don't know too much about what this panel's about and what you're planning to discuss. So maybe just an intro to yourselves to begin with. Maybe let's start with Rena Ranger.
Hi, my name is Rena Ranger, and I am the co-founder and chair of a social initiative called Women Empowered. And we basically bring speakers to anybody who want to hear them for inspiration and motivation. We have a charitable arm based on the service, on the concept of Seva, and we have a blog and other bits and bobs.
Great.
Did you?
And Deepak Parekh, would you like to share your story and bit of background, please?
Sure, yeah, I'm Deepak Parekh. I'm the founder of a charity called the Diwali Foundation. Um, Diwali, I guess, is very much about giving back, exchanging gifts, and bringing light where there's darkness. So I set up the foundation very much to do that. And one of our main events, funny enough, was today, which is called the Diwali Basket Brigade. And with the help and the support of the team, we deliver food hampers to socially deprived and vulnerable families across the UK, whereby normally we would pack and deliver these hampers and personally deliver them. This year we've delivered 2,000 hampers across Manchester, London, and Birmingham, and it's about just bringing a little bit of hope and a little bit of a smile to those in need.
Fantastic. And last of all, we've got Bhavani Shekhawat from the Akshaya Patra Foundation. You could just give us a bit of background on what you do.
Hello, so I'm Bhavani Singh Shekhawat. I have the privilege of representing the Akshaya Patra Foundation, which is a foundation. Essentially, Akshaya Patra means a pot of food that never runs out. Akshaya means limitless, and Patra is a pot of food. And we set up in India 20 years ago, and today we serve close to 1.8, 1.9 million children, close to 2 million children every single morning. And we've been doing that for 20 years, and we've brought that program to the United Kingdom. Millions of children have benefited from this program, not only to receive a fantastic plate of food in the classroom, but also then go on to become truly the very best version of themselves. So that's really who we are and what we do.
Fantastic. And
So,
I know of all. Yes, sorry. Just to mention, I mean, I know all three of you. I know of your organisations, and this is my part just to say you all do amazing work. So thank you at this point, just to say thank you and for the difference you've been making.
So I don't think we've got Hiten back, but this whole panel is about, like we were saying, social impact at the time of crisis. And I think Hiten wanted to explore some themes. So if we haven't got him and if we're carrying on, maybe I could just explain to you. We were going to talk about why we set up our various charities and what we do. So, for example, I think it would probably be prudent to ask Deepak why you started up why did you start up the Diwali Basket Brigade?
Sure. I mean, look, a couple of reasons, really, Rena. And first and foremost, the one thing I felt I wasn't doing enough of during the very auspicious occasion of Diwali was finding a channel to give back other than making a donation to a cause that's dear to one's heart. And there's many causes I'm sure all of us support. And through attending a similar type of event at Christmas, I realized that actually, do you know what? There's so much giving in this country during the festival of Christmas to families of all faiths and backgrounds. And I guess Diwali Basket Brigade is very much about doing exactly the same. We are supporting families of all faiths, backgrounds, but with the commonality of families who are living under the food poverty line. And it was a cause very dear to my heart. We started it 3 years ago. We packed, and with friends and family, we packed just over 300 hampers, and delivered them to families that were nominated by charities that we partnered with. a number of months before Diwali to ensure that we were getting to the right, I guess, homes that needed the food the most. And that's just evolved over time. I think the second reason I set it up, I guess, it's really about bringing the community together. I think Diwali is such an amazing, such a warm and very colorful festival. But these days we all live very busy lives, right? And we all live regionally in different places. Whilst we're very connected through social media and through technology, equally we're very disconnected. And one of the again massive I guess objectives of Diwali Basket Brigade is to bring the community together. And for the last 2 years, we've had over 200 volunteers packing and delivering these hampers, and the buzz and the atmosphere is just electric, right? And we have children from the age of 2 or 3 all the way through to elders in their 80s, and just that community cohesion, giving the elders an opportunity. It was interesting actually. One of the most humbling feedback I've had is from the elders who've always said, we've always wanted to do something like Diwali, but we've never really had channel, or we've never really known what to do. And particularly, giving them something that's quite, physically not too demanding, whether it's just, putting Diwali cards in an envelope that go in the bags, or whether it's lifting the heavy bags. There's something for everybody. And sadly, this year, we've not been able to do the same in terms of having an event due to COVID and the associated social distancing restrictions. But what we have done is we've partnered with charities and with food banks across London, North London, Birmingham, and Manchester. And through that great team effort and through that sort of collaboration, they've been delivering over the course of today. It's been a bit busy, so I've literally just made it back to my house a short while ago. They're busy delivering over 2,000 hampers, and the hampers are presented in a way that hopefully brings an element of a surprise gift factor to the recipient, and in that way, I think as a charity, what we're trying to do is spread the message of hope, the message of giving, the message of love, and I guess and happiness at Diwali. So we say we're trying to bring light to lives through the gifting of these food hampers, and as we grow, I'd like to think Diwali Foundation will continue doing that as the year on.
And thank you so much. And just to let everyone know who's watching and to our panel, I am taking over because we can't seem to connect Hiten, which is a real shame. But it's wonderful that I know all of you to be able to have this conversation and talk about social impact, which is so important to the British Indian community. And I mentioned earlier in our conversation, during this event, that the word seva and service is crucial when it comes to one of our cultural values. And so I'll come to you, Rina. Why did you set up Women Empowered, and particularly linking it back to the coronavirus pandemic, where reports say that women particularly have been mentally and psychologically more affected by the pandemic than men actually? So, why did you set up Women Empowered, and how have you seen perhaps maybe the need for it more during this time?
So Women Empowered is, 6, 7, 8 years old. So we set it up at a very different time. And the crisis we look at now is obviously through the lens of the pandemic. But if you cast your mind back 10 years, we had the financial crash, we had austerity, we've had, Brexit vote for some people. And it was kind of a merging of a few different things. So Women Empowered started, I just had my kids, and I was I'd been out of the loop for a little while. I'd lost my traditional confidence. My priorities had changed. What was possible for me had changed. And I was looking for a renewed purpose. And I wasn't alone in that. In the nursery playground car park, a lot of women were feeling that way. But what was unique about me was perhaps that I had the privilege of going to places and listening to people speak, give advice, maybe, sharing how they'd overcome adversity, or just sharing their innovation and inspiration. And I realized that I had an opportunity that perhaps other people didn't. And I saw that there was a need for that, and I could help to fill it. So we started Women Empowered. And I think when I look at us, we call ourselves We for short. We include men. We always have male speakers. We are about trying to create opportunities. So whether that is to create a new network, to create an ability for you to come and listen to somebody, to meet different people, like-minded people, to create channels to help with very few financial barriers. So our charitable arm is, like you said, all about seva and the donation of time. We have a blog that creates opportunities for people to give back. So that's what we do in a nutshell. And the crisis that we have had to overcome have just been changing throughout the years, unfortunately.
And we'll talk more specifically about some of the challenges your organisation has seen, as well as specifically, during this time particularly. Yeah. I come to you, Bhavani, and I apologise if I'm pronouncing anybody's name wrong. I've always been bad with names. Your foundation has done so much work in India, right? But you've been doing lots here in the UK. Why is that? Have you seen a greater need during the pandemic, or is it something else?
Well, so in India, we run a massive program, and we've had lots of learnings over the years. So we've served more than 4 billion meals, and really millions and millions of children that have had their lives transformed in India because of the work that Akshaya Patra does there. And in doing so, we realized that we had a lot of learning. Now, we have been in the UK for about 8-10 years, but largely as a fundraising arm for the work we do in India. About a couple of years ago, I think 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, or thereabouts, I came across a report. It landed on my desk, and that was the All-Party Parliamentary Group report on hunger in the UK. And when I first read it, my eyes popped out, because that report talked about millions of children in the United Kingdom going hungry in school. And particularly, holiday hunger was a big problem. And a part of me just didn't believe it. I said, look, where are these children? We live in our own bubbles. We question a lot of the stuff that's going around us, but we are not necessarily people who cut across a range of lifestyles. And therefore, a lot of this was hidden, even for me. And then we started doing some work and started to look at this in greater detail. And as I discovered more, we worked with London Business School and with a range of organizations. And I realized the problem was way bigger. And about 2 years ago, we teamed up with the GMSP Foundation, which is an amazing foundation, again, a British foundation run by the Sachdev family. And we decided to do something about it. So even before the pandemic hit us, we were preparing for a time when this problem would literally blow up in our faces. So we are really bringing the know-how and the experience and all of the science and the learnings we've had from India into the United Kingdom. So this is just another example of a good practice that has been very, very successful in one part of the world being introduced in another part of the world.
Fantastic. And of course, that conversation about the food crisis here has been ongoing, hasn't it? We've seen with footballer Marcus Rashford launching his campaign for free meals in the school holidays. One thing that we've touched on is that it's not just people, and I do want to hear about your experiences with people during this time as well and what you've seen. But talking of, how you've transported that kind of business model with that expertise, and Rena mentioned that her organisation has gone through many changes and different crises. What challenges have you seen during the coronavirus pandemic?
Sure. I'm happy to chip in there. I mean, look, as I alluded to earlier, we're a relatively embryonic charity. We started our first event 3 years ago, and I was pretty fixed on having a physical event, right? Because as we've all just said, Seva is something which the whole community like to get involved in some shape or form. And I certainly haven't experienced any shortage of volunteers who have wanted to come and roll their sleeves up, right? And the pandemic has completely changed that. And when things became quite difficult earlier in the spring, we were thinking ahead along with the team. How do we actually deliver our initial objective in a time when the need is even greater? And as Bhavani ji just said there, You could look at the stats in whichever direction you look, but there are double-digit percentage increases in the need for food parcels. I was staggered myself, right? Born and bred in this country, and quite frankly, one of the reasons I set it up was I felt actually I am living in this bubble where all my closest friends and family, perhaps haven't given me the exposure that is the reality out there, which is why there's so much headlines around hunger, poverty, and the hunger crisis. Trussell Trust very recently put some stats out, and I was staggered. That during the lockdown there was almost over 100% increase in the need for food parcels, and they're already giving out 1.5 million. That's an obscene amount. And if we can do our small bit to address that, then obviously that's Seva in itself. And in terms of the direct impact of the pandemic, we've had to adapt, and I think the key to that is collaboration. It's interesting. A lot of volunteers have wanted to still go and support delivering hampers, and one of the challenges is a lot of charities and a lot of food banks have become so paranoid of, and rightly so, of COVID transmission, and therefore only letting their own volunteers get involved. So there's been a lot more sensitivity around.
You mentioned the word, just to cut in. I mean, you mentioned the word adapt, and that's a key word for most of the population in the world, really, isn't it? That we've all had to adapt, and how challenging has it to adapt? Because ultimately, all three of you are providing an incredible service, but how easy has it been to adapt?
So for us, it's completely changed everything that we've done. We've always wanted to be Seva based, so anybody could get involved, and it wasn't about money, and it wasn't about people being excluded from getting involved because they were financially unable to or felt that it was very onerous. So for the last 6 years, we've been collaborating with SWAT, which has been a charity helping feeding those in need on the streets of London, or we've been going to nursing homes and sitting with the residents, singing some bhajans, painting nails, doing whatever we could to spread a little joy. All these things have had to stop. Last year, we collected 1,000 packets of sanitary towels, which we were then able to distribute to refugees, UK-based charities. They even went abroad. All of that, because of the pandemic, has had to stop. And what we found is that from doing things that where we wanted to take as many people and involve as many people as we possibly could, we've had to really rethink some of what we're doing. And our centralized work has almost come to a grinding halt, but we're now signposting people within our own and immediate communities. So there are collections for food banks. There are neighbors who may need a little help getting a prescription from somewhere. It's a different form of seva. It's much closer to home. It's much smaller. And what's been really heartening is that even at the height of the pandemic, when if you were relying on a supermarket slot for whatever reason and you couldn't get one for weeks on end and you were constrained to 70 items in your basket, people still had space to buy something for their neighbors or for that collection. And I think that there have always been more good people in this world than bad, and there are always people who are willing to help. And if you create those opportunities, you will see, with God's grace or with all the things that you believe in, people will come and help. So I think that is something that we just have to realize. And we are now going to micro level. So if it is running an event, it is asking for small donations to try and help something bigger. So it's been a massive change for us as well.
I suppose for us, I suppose for us it is really about maintaining the discipline around what really is inviolable. So for us, speed and scale is something that we really, really strive for. And the other thing that we really strive for is that we should not solve for hunger. We should solve for nutrition, because if we solve for nutrition, we will solve for hunger. If you only solve for hunger, we might end up creating a nutrition problem. And the other thing that we really remain resolutely focused on is what is it that we do for children, because they really are perhaps the ignored human capital of a nation, particularly between the age of 6 and 16, when we believe they are becoming independent. But we believe that if at that stage they are not nourished properly, things will really backfire on the economy going forward. So in India, we have now just finished serving 100 million meals during the pandemic. from the time when the pandemic started, which is March, to now, more than 100 million meals have been served. So essentially, it's about really bringing in innovation, and for us, it's been a real test for these inviolable principles. How do you still operate with speed and at scale? How do you still maintain the discipline around innovation, impact, and true focus on what you do? And at the same time, how do you keep unit economics low? So we still are being able to serve our meals at a third of the cost that would normally cost in the United Kingdom. And in India, with a pounds donation, we are able to serve a child, and with a few pounds, a family for an entire month. So what it is really required is utilizing the best in engineering science, the best in technology, and the best in human endeavor to harness it all together and then deploy it with speed and scale. I think during the pandemic, like in every other situation, there is good in the bad and there is bad in the good. It has also thrown up a lot of opportunities for us, not just the charity sector, but all of us to become a little bit more efficient with our time. And whilst on the one hand, it created a lot of challenges, it has also allowed us to focus on what's truly important differently. So I suppose the learning for us, and for me in particular, is that if you really focus on fixing the roof when the sun is shining, you are able to do a lot more when the tide turns rough.
Some very positive words there. I mean, you mentioned speed and scaling as well. I just wonder how challenging that's been, especially with all the restrictions. I mean, Rena's talked about the micro, support there, micro level support of there's social distancing, there's the rules and regulations over wearing masks and PPE. I mean, is that scalability and speed as much as you would like it to be at this point?
I think for organizations like Women Empowered, which don't have the scale that the other two perhaps do, it is about individuals almost being the change they want to see. And it is about people looking around in their communities and seeing, what can we do? And can we be a safe collection point for whatever is needed in that community or their area? And it's about, for us, it's about people springing up and becoming small kind of outposts to be that bigger change for a larger community, because we can't do things with the scale that we once were. So we're now relying on smaller projects and smaller initiatives to ripple through.
Yeah, I guess I'd echo some of that. As I alluded to earlier, we've had to partner across a much wider number of food banks and charities. But I guess going back to that micro level point, food demand for food on the ground is huge, and so long as we're willing to not be too controlling in the way we do these things and just keep focus on the ultimate objective, which is very much to the heart of what we're trying to do at the Diwali Foundation, then I think the answer, dealing with this current situation is just to continue working on a micro level with lots and lots of different smaller, sort of distribution hubs that can help us achieve, I guess, the objective that we've set out to do.
Just echoing what Reena and Deepak are saying, I think it's absolutely vital. It doesn't matter what you are trying to do as much as what matters is that the kind of collaboration you bring in is in your DNA. And what we need more than ever before, I think this pandemic has taught us that collaboration is way bigger than competition. If each one of us tries to do something end to end, we will end up serving far fewer people. It's fascinating that when 5 people serve 50, the 5 feel a lot better than the 50. But if 5 people are able to collaborate and serve 5 million, then truly we are creating the kind of impact that the world really needs from all of the work that is happening, not just in the charity sector, but at a personal level. I believe every enterprise only exists or should exist to serve. So whether you are a Unilever or a Nestle or a British Airways or a Boeing, you exist to serve. And if we could, as a sector, harness that element of service and bring it into the work we do collaboratively, perhaps we will all become obsolete, which would be a fantastic thing. So clearly, I think this pandemic has taught us more than ever before that the power of collaboration is absolutely critical.
I think
I
what
think you
I'm
make a
really
really
conscious. Sorry, I was just
go
going to
on,
say what
Rena.
I'm really conscious.
No, 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 go on.
We've all been talking about food, and yes, there is a need for food, and I think ethnically it's in our DNA that's the first thing we go to. But what I'm really disappointed that this pandemic has taken away is that we were meant to host another event. So I said last year we collected the sanitary towels. This year, our idea was to collect study books, and because people take 11 pluses, 13 pluses, GCSEs, whatever different milestones, 7 pluses they're doing. And there is an abundance of books in people's homes, and there is a vast need of books in different areas. We missed out on that collection at, ironically, what I think is a time where those books would have been needed the most because of the complete flux the education system's been in this year. And if you get all those, I completely agree with what Bhawanji is saying in terms of the collaborative scope and the collaborative ripple effect. It is larger than I feel that anything that you can perhaps achieve by yourself, and that's how you get that scaled kind of change that you want to see.
Yeah, if I may just such a fantastic example that Rina brought up, because the world needs a lot more than food. Food definitely is sort of the epicenter. And I'll just share this little example that we have very successfully introduced in India. We use technology to understand what every household really needed. So we have, fortunately in India, the biometric database that the government has. We collaborated with the government. We got the data. We could not run our kitchens because obviously pandemic doesn't allow you to run a kitchen. So we were running food parcels. But what we started introducing in those food parcels are also textbooks. We knew that if this household has a girl who's of puberty, we in that packet also had sanitary towels going into that household. So we collaborated with organizations that provide books. We collaborated with organizations that provided sanitary towels. We made sure that there was enough food in it. We knew exactly what the nature of that household, and we collaborated with the government to access the database and made sure that there was no duplication of that service. In other words, a household was not receiving more than one packet. And that's 100 million delivered. And truly, I think that is the power of collaboration and truly understanding that the world in a pandemic or any other situation needs composite help. And if you can provide that composite help in a way that requires less money and less effort, then truly we have done something meaningful.
I think
Absolutely.
it's so inspiring, the fact that you've really here you're talking about innovation in a time that is difficult and challenging. You're talking about actually not just you've clearly discussed how your organizations may have faced challenges, but how you've not only overcome those challenges but then branched out to recognize the challenges that people are facing, even though your organization may not have provided that support in the first place. But actually it's something that you've seen is needed, and you've, again, that word service, provided that service to people. We are coming towards the end, but I know that because you are all on the ground and you're meeting people constantly, and you've spoken about seeing different areas of needs within the community, if there's maybe one story that sticks out to you, a personal story that you've seen that you could inspire others to maybe help within that area, to kind of prompt how can others help, and what could they maybe be looking out for in their own communities? Any of you?
Deepak, you go first.
I think that if I'm speaking honestly, I think anyone you speak to, this whole year is almost gone, and I think we all look back and nothing. People are sad in some way, or they've just lost their mojo, or they feel a bit blah, or they just have that something is different in them. I think mental health is going to be a really big thing. Loneliness is going to be a big thing, and it's just about talking to people. We had an event for raising money for the Princess Trust. We had breakfast with Gina Miller, somebody whose story is far-ranging, much more than you've seen in the press and news, and such an inspiring character. But just to get people to dial in and listen at a time where there is that kind of baseline blah, sadness, or whatever you want to call it, or so much going on, it's really difficult to get people to engage sometimes. And when you've dragged them and said, listen, it's going to make you feel a little bit more positive or give you an inspiration, they do come out the other end saying, you're right, this is what I needed. it's a story that's inspired me and I feel a bit more positive. I think that rut that many of us may just meander into by mistake or just by circumstance or what's going on around us is one that we need to try and avoid. And when you see people in that direction, it's proactively pulling somebody out and saying, come on, I know it's hard. I feel it too. And this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. And Rena, I guess on that theme, I'd say, look, it's one of the comments I talked about before with Hitan many a times about, sometimes people just need that inspiration. If we just put the pandemic aside, to do something, there's the added quote of, giving is living. We can all have very successful careers. We can all make lots of money, or we could all do lots of different things in our lives. But actually, giving back is the most fulfilling that I know. We as a community have in our DNA anyway. But often there are just those out there who just need that lift, and this is more time than ever. Any particular time. The pandemic, as you say, has increased that need to just give people that lift. And we were talking earlier about just trying to be relevant to the time. I guess one thing I didn't mention and I should do is through the power of collaboration. Some of the organizations we've worked with have said, actually, would you mind us adding mental well-being packs to your Diwali hampers? And I said, you know what, absolutely, I have no issue with that whatsoever. And they decided to call it a kindness bag, just to kind of, I guess, have that impact on the recipient family. And we took the decision that actually, you know what, hygiene products are probably even more important now than they've ever been. So rather than just the food, we put masks and hand sanitizer in each hamper this year. And that, again, is just to make it a bit more relevant. I think it's important that we as grassroots continue talking, listening. There's so many. One thing I've learned through my journey in this last 3 years in running the charity is there are so many good people out there. We always hear the bad stories, but there are so many good people out there, the unsung heroes who are doing a lot of work on the ground at a very micro level, who are making a massive difference. And if we could just continue on that theme, I think, Bhavanji, you said it very well earlier, collaboration, not competition. There's lots of overlap between some of the work, a number of organizations, both in our community and other communities do. I think the more we can collaborate, the better. I should have said at the very start, obviously, thanks to and the Indian team for putting this together, right? Because it's given us a platform to discuss, which we wouldn't have otherwise. Not along with all the as well, which I know my kids are certainly looking forward to watch later this evening with.
I'll just share a story since you asked for an inspiring story. I get really inspired by young people and their ability to just go above and beyond. So there's this young dentist who came across Akshay Patra's work when he was graduating from King's College. And I hope he pardons me because I'm going to take his name. His name is Ajay Mehta. And when he was, I think, 27, 28, he qualified as a dentist. And he'd said, look, I really want to do something. And he started a course for young dentists to qualify an exam. And every year he ran that course and raised about 20,000 pounds as a fee for that course and donated all of that fee, 100% of it, to our cause. And to be able to do that, he actually probably put in about 400 hours of work. And this is a dentist who obviously during the pandemic had a very, very difficult time. He is a young dentist, works easily 13, 14 hours. And he still took the entire thing online. And he said, I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm going to find new ways in which I could deliver that course. And guess what? He's actually delivered it to a larger number of people, raised a larger sum, and doesn't even want to be recognized for it. And that is really, really inspiring. And this is despite the fact that I think he was driving 6 hours one way, at least once a week, to be able to just get to work and back from where he lives in London. And I think these really are stories that just make me get out of bed every single morning and do more. There is so much goodness around us that is just
what you're saying,
not to be.
Sorry. I think what you're saying that what we found throughout our years is no matter what you think, what your situation is, there is always something somebody can do to help somebody else, whether that's kindness, a conversation. And I think the indiscriminate nature of the pandemic, people have lost loved ones, lost livelihoods, lost futures or directions or dreams. And some of the people who their circumstances have changed. And I think we also need to be mindful about each other and collaboration in a professional and a charitable scope, but also in a human scope, to say, are you okay? How can we help? I appreciate things might be difficult. And, acknowledging that circumstances for so many people have changed literally overnight. And we should be able to...
Yeah, Irina, I'd add to that point, I guess, something which I'll just say, really pertinent point around the fact that the pandemic's had on just our own self-awareness, but also judgments around how you approach the pandemic. I've noticed, even just within my own network, that certain individuals or families will be a bit more relaxed with the impact of COVID and the paranoia around use of masks, gloves, and all the rest of it. And it's just, I think, like, as you say, it's just being really mindful of the person you're talking to. You don't know what their journey is. And if we're talking about social impact here, but actually just as a community, I think it's so important going forward, because this is going to be around for a little bit longer, but we will get through it. But as we're going through that journey, the more that everyone can take the time just to be really reflective of one's experience or personal paranoia, on the risk of COVID transmission is really important, because everybody's having a really tough time. You're right. Even just, people have never had an issue before in any shape or form. Just even the simple notion of going for a coffee with a friend when the lockdown had eased over the summer. Some people would feel relaxed with it, some people wouldn't. So I think it's really important that we kind of highlight that self-awareness point.
And I think highlighting that social impact does not mean financial impact. Social impact is so much.
Yeah.
It's
huge.
just
Much
not
more. I think
Huge.
you've all touched on those themes as well. And we've brought it round from that kind of business aspect to the personal aspect to the social and psychological and the mental aspect too. It's been a really interesting, really inspiring discussion. And I can imagine that you have mobilized people watching this to want to get involved. And if anyone does want to get involved, if you could just very quickly, one by one, how can people find out about your organizations?
For us, we have a very simple website, diwalibaskerbrigade.org. By all means, you can inquire through there. There's a newsletter. You can subscribe, and we'll send you more information about what we're up to and other events going forward.
For us, it's womenempowered.co.uk, and we always welcome men, just in case the name didn't imply it.
I'm joining, Rina.
I have a feminine name, so I'm allowed. Right. And for those of us who are interested in our work, it is tapf.org.uk. So Tango Alpha Peter Foxtrot, the Akshay Patra Foundation.org.uk. And I just wanted to just very quickly say that we'll get through the pandemic, but the real problem is around the corner. The real challenge is yet to begin. The aftermath of the pandemic is going to be something that is totally unprecedented, not just for us as people or people who work in social impact, but for our governments, for our societies, for our communities. And I think being prepared to still continue to serve once we have found a vaccine and got through the pandemic will require the very, very best of human endeavor and human ingenuity. So really look forward to working with all of you to make that contribution as and when that happens.
We'll need to have another panel discussion, and hopefully Hiten Mehta will be able to be part of that conversation too. I'm sure he really, really wanted to be part of it. And yes, so Deepak Parekh, Bhavani Shekhawat and Rina Ranger, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.